Young Hollow, there are but two paths. Inherit the order of this world, or destroy it. Once, the Lord of Light banished dark and all that stemmed from humanity. And men assumed a fleeting form. These are the roots of our world. Men are props in a stage of life, and no matter how tender, how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie.
Every franchise has an outlier, an underappreciated and misunderstood installment. Dark Souls 2 might not be everyone's favourite Dark Souls game, however it's certainly the most underrated one by a landslide. I for one put this game off due to its criticism and overall lack of popularity, and only when I cast my preconceived biases aside I was able to see how amazing this game truly is. Most by now know this game was not directed by Miyazaki himself. Rather, he passed this game on to other devs from Bandai Namco, as he was working on Bloodborne at the time. So that's a pretty solid answer as to why this game feels so different from the rest. I don't want to beat around the bush. This game does certain things better than Dark Souls 1 or 3, Sekiro, Bloodborne and Elden Ring. All the while the opposite can be said for Dark Souls 2 as well. I've straight up been contemplating whether this is truly the best Dark Souls game or the worst. I'll give you the most basic summary before getting into what has changed from Dark Souls 1. And without wasting your time, I'll explain why I love this game so much. The enemy AI in all of FromSoft's previous games either attack you or they don't attack. Granted, each have a very distinctive attack pattern. They're all simply just placed there to be defeated. In contrast, the enemies in Dark Souls 2 have a wider variety of behaviours. Some enemies run away from you to chase them down, some are passive until you attack a member of its group, or passive until you kill the area boss. Some will play dead, some will fear light, some will hit trees, and some can only be detected by their shadow. Some suicide to break your equipment, and if you hit some locked doors, the enemy AI can actually be tricked into opening it for you. Right here I simply listed a wider variety of AI behaviour that lacks from any other FromSoft game. And although intelligent enemies don't make a game a masterpiece on its own, it helps to immerse you into the environment. Furthermore, this is the longest Dark Souls game by far, and it's by far the most expansive and diverse in terms of the locations and bosses. With all of these great things to be said, it's safe to say that this game had extreme potential to be FromSoft's best game they have ever created, and I wholeheartedly mean that. But after all, this game was almost cancelled many times through its development, and for a fair enough reason. This could have been FromSoft's best game they've ever created, but it was missing something. When comparing this game to its predecessors, the boss battles were bountiful, however they weren't exactly as memorable or as challenging. There wasn't a sense of true progression and interconnectedness to a lot of the map design. And that goes with the story as well. Although the concept and characters were interesting, and the story itself could have been stronger than Dark Souls 1, it felt kind of soulless and without as much meaning. And there was so much ambiguity with all of the characters and with the theme. The enemy AI behaviour range was superior, however I had no real connection or relatability to the NPCs in the world. Granted, I felt the dialogue length itself was pretty remarkable, but there wasn't an interesting enigma of a character like Big Hat Logan where you follow a storyline and you're as eager to see what comes next or question what happened to them. There wasn't a brotherhood bond between another character like Knight Solaire. that not only had an amazing and tragic adventure, but represented a glimmer of hope with an otherwise dismal and hopeless world. Not to mention the flow of the game could just stagnate, it could just become boring and chore-like. Granted, this is personal opinion, however when it came to the Iron Keep, this game took a really excruciating turn for the worst, and it's not that I found it challenging, it's that I just found it unbearably chore-like. There can be long stretches of chess-like placements of enemies with bonfires so far and few in between, and whether it's Iron Keep or Shrine of Amana, the boss battle at the end can be laughably easy. In fact, this goes with most bosses within this game. They're all relatively easy, apart from the DLC, but it makes you question something you should never question when playing a FromSoft game. Was this even worth it? Additionally, there is a completely different fast travel system within this game, in that it's instantaneous from the very start. This was a sigh of relief for most players because admittedly the world was not as interconnected as Dark Souls 1 because they branch off into completely separate paths from the hub area. But some other players felt fast travel was earned in Dark Souls 1, and I need to agree it was extremely gratifying, but the developers knew that with the map design of Dark Souls 2, restricting fast travel could have made travelling around the world a lot more frustrating and tedious. Admittedly, there was a lot of areas where I wish there wasn't any fast travel, and I wish I could just explore and have the knowledge that I couldn't come back out until I completed it. In this game, you can now equip 4 rings instead of 2, and when it comes to leveling up in the game, players can no longer level up at any bonfire, rather they'll have to travel to the hub area and use a mysterious woman to help them level up, like the Firekeeper in Dark Souls 3. On the same subject as leveling, one of the most important attributes now is adaptability, which levels up your agility to improve your rolling invulnerability and time to scull your Estus flasks. Rolling plays out almost the exact same in all of FromSoft's games, apart from Sekiro. You roll to dodge a move, and the lighter our equip load, the faster and more evasive you are. Whereas in Dark Souls 2, leveling up your adaptability increases the amount of iframes your character has in terms of invulnerability. The base rolling iframes of invulnerability that your character has in Dark Souls 1 and 3 are the exact same, 13 iframes. And while Dark Souls 2 is lower on default, leveling this stat up can give you around 16 iframes eventually. So if you're playing this game for the first time without realizing this crucial aspect, dodging feels as responsive as the local council when there's a pothole in the road. It's a damn useful stat to level up, but there's nothing worse than having that one stat that you need to level up or the game it just isn't fun. Another new mechanic in Dark Souls 2 alone is the petrification of enemies and NPCs that often block your path. You're able to use the fragrant branch of Yore to unpetrify them, and you must use these items sparingly as it's hard to come by at the end of the game. But making note of areas you need to come back to and deciding which paths to open up is a fun experience in my opinion. Hollowing also plays out completely different in Dark Souls 2 compared to the other games. This can seem way too punishing initially, however I feel that it's a lot more forgiving than people realize. For starters, unlike with Dark Souls 3, you slowly lose a small percentage of your health after dying repeatedly, eventually until you have half of your maximum health. Whereas with Dark Souls 3 you just lose 30% on your first death and it stops there. But instead of losing 30% at all, you can stop it at 25% with the Ring of Binding, a ring you can easily get at the start of the game. This is something not a lot of people consider. On the other hand, Ember in Dark Souls 3 and Humanity in Dark Souls 1, tools that are used to reverse hollowing, are far easier to come by than human effigies in Dark Souls 2. However, I feel that this is a good thing since farming endless humanities and Ember defeat the purpose of challenge within these games. In terms of the mechanical feel of this game, it feels more clunky and unresponsive compared to the others. Sometimes buttons would just not press, whether it's healing, dodging, sometimes the game would just be like, nah, No, you don't need to do that. Both on the PS5 and PC I had this problem with different controllers, but it was nowhere near as unresponsive as running. Sometimes you could hold down the circle or B button to wait a solid few seconds before your character decides to run. This can be due to your stamina bar still recovering, which still doesn't excuse this delay. There's a bar there for a reason, and I'm fully capable of understanding it's not full, but there's some juice there. Let me run away from this goddamn enemy, you dirty son of a bitch. Hitting or getting hit can feel pretty lackluster as well. There's not the same impact in giving or receiving physical attacks compared to the other games, but one of the biggest changes is when you kill enemies 12 times over, they will despawn forever until New Game Plus or a bonfire aesthetic is used. This is ridiculous for a Souls-like game because you're not only making the game easier by eventually removing the challenge within that area, but you're making sure that players can't get any souls to level up from within that area. But the bonfire aesthetic, on the other hand, is a fantastic addition to this game, and a mechanic that's only present within Dark Souls 2. You can now burn aesthetics at specific bonfires to not only make enemies harder, which can in return drop more souls, but respawn bosses that you want to fight again. And NPC phantom invaders will also return with more strength and at times more numbers. This is a brilliant idea, as you don't need to go through New Game Plus to get a more challenging experience or refight your favorite boss. As of now, there's only one other FromSoft game that lets you refight bosses again, and that is Sekiro. In the other games, you need to be summoned into another world and fight a boss 2-on-1, which removes a substantial chunk of the challenge. Before using the aesthetic, it will warn you that this change will be permanent, and this is because it makes a bonfire New Game Plus. So when you actually start a New Plus game, that area will now be New Game Plus Plus. And on the topic of New Game Plus, this game adds new changes to each new playthrough up until New Game Plus 7. This features different enemy placements, different or more phantoms, and while Dark Souls 3 is a game I've admittedly replayed the most, its downfall is that there's no new changes with each new playthrough, and you'll just rush through the entire game a lot quicker than the first. However, I do wish enemies didn't despawn altogether at the same time. It's such a shame for this game to have such a brilliant idea with a very questionable and silly implementation at the same time. And for the last point I want to bring up, something I believe Dark Souls 2 does a lot better than 1 or even 3 at times, is its range of powerful weapons, or range of weapons and armor entirely. There's more weapons and armor in this game than any other FromSoft game apart from Elden Ring. I honestly believe that the Sweehander is the end-all be-all when it comes to picking a powerful weapon in Dark Souls 1, whereas in Dark Souls 2 I tend to see more people swearing by completely different things ranging so much wider than its predecessor. And with that out of the way, let's get into the actual story of Dark Souls 2. The introduction alone has got to be the best intro out of any Soulsborne game ever. Hands down, it is visually and thematically jaw-dropping. Unlike the other Dark Souls games, or even Elden Ring, this cinematic doesn't focus on the bosses or journey as much as the actual character you are playing as, and what it means to go hollow. You get a cinematic of what seems to be your wife and child melting into nothingness, as the narrator says your past and future will have no meaning, but most of all, you won't even care because by then you will be something other than human, a hollow that feeds on souls. It's here you get introduced to Drang Lake, the outskirts, and the kingdom in which you partake this adventure. Then the narrator says something interesting that tends to pop up in conversation more than once. You will stand before these gates without really knowing why. Eventually you row your way to these gates and jump into a swirling whirlpool which the narrator describes as your fate, like a moth drawn to a flame. The way that I like to see this opening cinematic and how it relates to the themes of this game is it's a lot more personable to the main character, or more specifically you, than the journey itself. It's clear that this cursed undead was once just a regular person, until he or she obtained the dark sign, and despite clinging to their sanity, they lose their mind and become hollow. The primary takeaway is that wherever you came from, whoever you were, and whatever you loved is completely gone. except for the knowledge that you did come from somewhere, you were someone, and there was someone that you loved. And perhaps the fact that none of that matters to you anymore is more devastating than remembering. It could be related to amnesia or dementia in a way. Is it more dreadful for you to run away from your family or to never remember them again? This theme of hollowing and who the hollow could have been beforehand isn't explored as much in other games. You simply just go on your adventure and don't question these kinds of things. Did jumping into this whirlpool like a moth drawn to a flame grant the player to enter the world of the dead, or is it all just a vision? Did the other characters also enter the world of the undead through similar means? The first location you head right into is called Things Betwixt, which in other words mean things between, and this is mainly because this location acts as a small dimensional rift between Drang Lake and the outside world. You eventually come across a mysterious and foreboding house in these woodlands, to come across 3 hooded elderly ladies, Strowan, Moral and Griant. Don't know if I said that right, who happen to be former firekeepers. The character creation segment in this game feels more like a recreation since you know that you have been someone in the past, so it wouldn't be a far-fetched idea to say that you're reinventing yourself after becoming hollow. A lot of people do not like this intro where the former firekeepers say this game is hard and you'll die a lot, suspecting that this game just simply feeds off of the difficulty more than it did in the original installment. However, I honestly believe that this opening monologue complements the Dark Souls theme so damn well in such a cutthroat and direct way. Like I mentioned with Dark Souls 1, death is intrinsic to the story and what it means to become hollow. You're not simply on a journey that tests the character's skills and strength, furthermore the player's patience and resilience. And if this were someone's first Dark Souls game to play when this released, I think this explanation would be better than Dark Souls 1's lack of it. I simply loved how in this segment the former firekeepers are just straight up mocking you and have absolutely no faith in your journey, because similar to real life, this feeling instills determination within the player. These games are demonstrations that not everything is supposed to be a walk in the park, aka any other AAA video game. You will die countlessly and feel like giving up, and you probably will give up. But with enough faith you'll come back and you will pull through. You're left to start your adventure through a tutorial section of sorts, and Dark Souls 2 has one of the best entrances to a hub area from any FromSoft game to date. The walk out of the dark tunnel, seeing the light in the distance grow bigger and bigger to the magnificent lighting and scenery of Majula, it's just still something that shocks me to this day. It's seriously hard to imagine that this game is almost 10 years old, and I swear the theme of Majula will never leave me no matter how old and forgetful and dementia-ridden I'll get. I will literally always remember the theme of Majula. So this place, Majula, is a small remote town situated on the northern coast of Drang Lake. It's the center of several crossroads leading the player throughout the kingdom. We will go into more detail about what makes this area such a safe haven when we head to the next area, but there are several NPCs that are important for progression in this area. One is the Emerald Herald, the firekeeper of this area who we will learn more about later. The second NPC is a disheartened blacksmith who lost his key, and finding his key grants you the ability to upgrade your weapons. There's also an armorer here who has a really good early game armor set that increases the number of souls gained, but there's also a feature that every FromSoft game should have, but it just doesn't for some reason. It's a death counter. There is a death counter in Majula, which is an excellent feature, because if you're online you'll be able to see all the deaths in the world on this one plaque. Meanwhile, in offline mode you'll be able to see your own deaths. Like I said, this area branches off into many different areas, however there's only 2 easily accessible ones for now, as one is blocked off by a petrified NPC and the other requires the help of a miracle user found in Heide's Tower of Flame. However, there's no real set path you need to go on, which gives players a lot of freedom compared to the other FromSoft games. Personally, I always head toward the Forest of the Fallen Giants first, since I see it as a simple stepping stone for what's to come. You'll come to find out that a lot of the map layouts coupled with the enemy placements are extremely calculated and methodical in Dark Souls 2, more than 1 or 3. They require a lot more memorization. Let's now discuss the name behind this location and why it has made Majula a safe haven for you. Long ago there was a war between King Vendrick and the Giants, instigated when the Queen Nashandra manipulated Vendrick into attacking the Giants, claiming that they were a threat to the kingdom of Drang Lake. Nashandra actually tricked Vendrick twice because her normal form of a hot blonde lady was also bogus. She really looks like a villain you'd find in Scorn, if Scorn had cool villains. It's said that Vendrick ventured into the land of the Giants and brought back something with him that he stole from the Giants after his crusade. What this mysterious item was is unknown, however it hasn't stopped people from speculating that he took the Lord Soul or Lord Vessel. Regardless, the Giants returned to ravage these lands, and a monumental war in the kingdom of Dran Lake pursued. The Giants eventually lost this battle, however still devastated the land so much that it's clear to see this kingdom would have been far better off without pissing off the Giants. So the Forest of the Fallen Giants was a kingdom entirely ravaged by this war, and the soldiers that defended this place became hollow long ago, succumbing to the curse of the undead. It's speculated that a lot of the trees in this location are actually remains of the fallen giants, as all giants were killed except one, who can be your first boss battle in this game. And yeah, FromSoft have a habit of making integral boss battles with seriously cool and intimidating designs feel like a joke. This boss battle is one of the easiest in the game, however it's not hard to understand why this fight may seem so easy. This is the last giant, a beaten, broken and locked up survivor of the invading forces that were once so powerful. This creature shouldn't even be able to muster up the strength to face you in battle, yet it sees you enter through the fog gate and hates you so much that it's willing to tear off its own arm to beat you with it. And I'll delve into why and how he's able to recognize you towards the end of this video, since this giant could play a significant role in this adventure's endgame. From here you can also fight another boss that happens to reoccur many times throughout this adventure, the Persuer. The reasons for giving this knight the name of Persuer is because this enemy hunts down those who bear the undead curse, relentlessly pursuing until his target is slain. This boss is very well balanced and rewarding to defeat, especially at a low level, but there is a method you can take advantage of where you can run behind the boss to the ballistas or the crossbows to easily take out the enemy at a distance, but its movesets and patterns make it a highly enjoyable fight. We'll return to the Forest of the Fallen Giants later in this adventure, however it's time to head to Heide's Tower of Flame to grab the Miracle User to help progress through our journey. This area is spectacularly designed, and I wish that it were a little longer because there's not a lot of places quite like this. This area is reminiscent of Anor Londo, and while it seems like a visually striking and serene location, it demonstrates a long-lasting injury that the giants inflicted. The old knights are the main obstacle when arriving at this location for the first time, and unlike the hollowed soldiers in the Forest of the Fallen Giants, they're a bit more challenging to fight one-on-one. They have wide attacks and sometimes very unpredictable attacks. They could even straight up knock you off of the edge. However, this is where I started practicing against bigger enemies and farming some souls on my first playthrough, then discovering that they despawn after 12 tries. But at the same time, I was getting maybe a bit too powerful before realizing there were two bosses here. And we'll touch on the optional boss at first, and what makes you question everything is Ornstein is here. Why the hell is Ornstein here? Some people have their theories. Some people suggest that this is an illusion since he no longer deals lightning damage and he doesn't even drop anything upon death. Others think that this is Shieldless Lothian, a warrior from the kingdom of Pharros, but I'm leaning towards boiling this down to simple fan service gone wrong. This battle is not only laughably easy but adds nothing to the game apart from baseless speculation. I believe Ornstein was just better left untouched from Dark Souls 1. The second boss is really who you need to defeat to progress through this journey, and granted there is interesting mechanics to do with this boss arena. Around this location there are levers you can pull that turns this boss arena from a pretty small circular platform that's easy to fall off of to a fully formed boss arena. Funny thing is, this boss is actually called Dragon Rider, and so are the other giant enemies in this location. However, they're all bullshit artists because they've only ever flown wyverns. But this Dragon Rider is special because he served King Vendrick. Talk about a Van Dyck rider. After this, you talk to some lady called Licia, who claims to be a cleric absolutely obsessed with miracles and gets quite offended if you stop talking to her and refuse to buy miracles. But after conversing with her for a while longer, she ends up coming to Drang Lake to open a path for you to continue on your journey. There's a lot of theories and pretty strongly supported theories that this lady is not who she seems, and possibly murdered people for her gear and miracles. This is supported with one of her lines of dialogue.
Without any goings on, I'll have to move soon to a place I could help the gullible.
So yeah, she's a con artist, enough said. Next up is No Man's Wharf, a cool designed location set inside a cave infested with undead pirates and feral dogs. And this area reminds me a lot of Neo for some reason. This is the first location you're urged to use your torches, however I never actually used torches. Funnily enough, the base game was actually meant to be a lot darker, but they scrapped the idea because that would have been a silly idea. And you would have had to use torches. There are some notable enemies that pop up here, the Varagians, and here is some information about them from the game that makes their backstory quite interesting. The Varagians were a fierce band of pirates who prowled the seas of Drang Lake's northern coastline. They were conquered by a former king who chose to force them into hard labour at No Man's Wharf, rather than imprison them. Who this king is unknown, however it's safe to suggest that it could be Vendrick, but when observing their armour it's clear that they arrived from another continent, said to be the home of things inhuman, which could have been the same place that the giants came from as well. Another interesting creature found further into the cave is called the Dark Dweller, a spider-like monstrosity that can be a bit more challenging than the undead Varagians. However, if you use a torch to light the way, you will come to find that they are terrified of fire, making traversing this area a hell of a lot easier. Before we reach the end, however, there are two notable NPCs that can be found here, as well as further along the journey. First is Lucatiel of Mirrah, a standoffish woman at first who eventually comes around and starts to trust you. She offers to help you and we will see her further along in the journey. And the second is a mad dog, Gavlan. This dude is a FromSoft treasure. Gavlan is a member of the race known as Gurn, FromSoft's version of dwarves. And while this dude seems like a harmless, unsuspecting dwarven drunk, we will soon come to find out that the other Gurn are actually poo stains. Gavlan, on the other hand, is not a dickhead because, after all,
Gavlan will, Gavlan deal.
When you get to the end of this map, oh yeah, there's another NPC, but he doesn't talk to you if you're a dumb cunt, so I'm just gonna ignore that smug son of a bitch. When you get to the end and call the boat, you're greeted with a gnarly cinematic, I'm not gonna lie. And when the boat comes, it's here to stay, and I'm grateful to this day that there's a shortcut able to be unlocked that leads you directly from the bonfire to the Flexile Sentry, so you don't ever have to go through this shit again. The Flexile Sentry, in my opinion, is a criminally underrated boss design. It's similar to how I feel about the Capra Demon, with one small difference. It's just a little bit harder than the Capra Demon, seeing as you cannot hit it from behind as its Siamese twin will be there. And like the Capra Demon as well, this boss will return as a regular enemy very shortly. I also don't mind the time limit aspect of this boss fight because the water starts to rise around you the longer you drag out this encounter. Regardless of how easy these bosses are in this game, this was the first boss fight that felt somewhat rewarding. And I really liked the change from the rugged undead pirate aesthetic to the outdoor desolate castles known as the Lost Bastille. This entire area used to be known as the Kingdom of Alkin, but is now a large prison ground containing countless hollowed exiled by the king in this location. This is also the only location in the game that I can think of where you fight off not one but two pursuers. The lady that you met back in the Wharf is glad to see you again and hints that this place used to be glorious back in the day, and it's sad to see what this has become. You'll then find your next boss fight in this area called the Ruined Sentinels, soulless creations of the Jailer. It's unlikely that the Jailer refers to the undead jailers, but more likely the previous ruler of this castle. There's not much to go off on, and you'll find that there's not much to go off with almost everything in Dark Souls 2, as a lot of lore is left up to interpretation, a lot more than usual, but since Aldia and his brother Vendrick were experimenting with souls and imbuing things with sentience, we could suggest that Aldia could have created these machines to serve his purpose of keeping the prisoners in check and killing anyone who tries to escape. I remember these bosses being quite difficult when I was a kid, only to find them laughably easy now as an adult. You'll notice fighting these three that they have each individual name, suggesting that they have some of their personality intact. As further into the game, when you reach Dranglake Castle, they're simply a common enemy who behave all the same. They don't do anything wild like throwing their shield at you. Also, yes, these are optional, and so is an entire area in this section before we make our way to the final boss in Sinner's Rise, Belfry Luna. Belfry Luna is a counterpart of Belfry Sol, an infuriating location we will get to later. These towers symbolize two lovers who could never be together, in direct relation to the Princess of Ven and the Prince of Alkin's love being forbidden. Not much is known about the Prince and Princess, again beyond speculation, but we do know that they made some strange and fairly annoying bell keepers guard the bell towers.
Whoever they are, whoever be they.
Shut the fuck up! This bell is home to the Belfry Gargoyles. They're like the Gargoyles from Dark Souls 1, in fact I'm quite sure there's no real difference between them, but more gargoyles. I already touched on the importance of gargoyles guarding religious bell towers in my previous Dark Souls retrospective, so if you want to check that out and you haven't, check it out, but it's really hard to say whether this boss fight is easier or harder than the Dark Souls 1 version. Of course, there are more gargoyles, leaving less time to attack. However, this place being optional leaves the choice for you to come back later, which is what I did because I didn't even know this whole area existed until my second playthrough, and because of that alone I didn't really get to experience these things at a low level, and seeing as the Bell Tower Gargoyles from Dark Souls 1 are not optional bosses and appear earlier on in the game, I'll definitely say that those bosses are a lot harder. However, these gargoyles' speed have noticeably been improved, but without a doubt these are the hardest bosses of this area from the No Man's Wharf to Sinner's Rise, as the final boss suffers from something this game does quite a lot: make a journey seem completely pointless. The Lost Sinner is definitely an easy final boss, arguably one of the easiest in the game, but her story is actually extremely interesting. Right at the start of this cutscene you get a rude callback to Dark Souls 1's Chaos Bug, the parasite leading to Solaire's demise. Crawl into the eye of the Lost Sinner, seemingly taking control of her in order to kill you, just as it did in Dark Souls 1. The Lost Sinner has willingly locked herself away in this hellhole by her own accord, as punishment for her sins of which is unknown beyond speculation, but there are theories that the Lost Sinner is in fact the Witch of Izalith, eternally punishing herself for the sins of her past. Then there are those who see this person as a simple successor to the Witch of Izalith, and those who see no true connection at all. I don't believe this person to be the Witch of Izalith herself, because I'm quite sure that she's dead, and the Chaos Bug itself isn't enough to justify the strongest of connections. However, I am open to any other opinions in the comments down below. But with these two crucial facts in mind, the Chaos Bug controlling her mind and her eternal isolation, it's clear to see why defeating her was so easy easy. This theme has striking similarities to the last giant boss fight that you encountered at the start of the game, suggesting that your character is facing off foes who have already been defeated. Now it's time to light your very first primal bonfire after acquiring your first Lord Soul. And next up, you either have to purchase a rite of passage from the con artist to enter the Huntsman's Copse, or you can kill her and take the Lockstone and progress. But I'm just going to settle something before we continue to talk about the adventure. The Huntsman's Copse should have been called the Huntsman's Corpse, okay? What the hell is a copse? I googled it and it turns out it means a small group of trees. This is a forest. The first location you get to in this game is rumoured to have been modelled after the mansion of Tequendama Falls, which is now a museum in Colombia. And even though the mansion itself does have striking similarities, it's the mountains that really look exactly like the Huntsman's Corpse. There is a key to the prison in the Huntsman's Corpse that best describes this area in a relatively short and precise way. The undead hunts during the reign of the Old Iron King took place in this forest, and the cells in which the undead were held in still stand there to this day. However, the march of time has eroded away any difference between the captors and the captives. The last line of dialogue I believe to be the most important. As the undead curse swept through this place, eventually the captors, being the torturer and the captive undead, have both lost their sanity and forgot all about their roles in this forest. Another interesting creature found past this mansion is the torturer, wielding weapons intended to inflict pain instead of outright death. And the great moths, the giant poisonous creatures hiding away in caves through the corpse. There are two bosses in this area, one of which is entirely optional and possibly the most infuriating boss runs of all time. However, there is a cheese. There is a very tasty cheese indeed. But the first time I played this game, I actually got stuck here and gave up for a few months, only to finally defeat the boss and discover that it was all for absolutely nothing. But the reason why I touch on this is because during the Old King's rule, he sent out his knights to round up the undead from the kingdom of Ven for fun, and during this time the executioner's chariot was designed to be used as a torture tool for the undead during these exact hunts. This whole Colosseum is just designed for the chariot to run around and perpetually knock over the undead and kill them over and over and over again. And even long after the Iron King's kingdom fell to lava and rock, the chariot prevailed with its punishment of the undead. Funnily enough, this was not under the control of the rider, rather the horses possessed the rider. And the hardest part about this boss, apart from the run, is most definitely the skeletons, who also appear in the next boss fight, the Skeleton Lords, which are the final and only main boss fight in this location. And you'll come to find out there's a lot of group boss fights in this area. In fact, I'm pretty sure this game, out of all the Dark Souls games, has the most of them, and I don't even need to look that up to confirm it. I'm like 99% sure. The main enemies are the Scythe Lord, the Staff Lord, and the Halberd Lord. But again, the hardest part about this boss is the abundance of little shitty skeletons. The Skeleton Lords were actually the leaders of the hunts at the Iron King's command, and after their memories were purged in Rebirth, they were situated here to remain for eternity until you decided to come along and gwiddy on the dance floor. And for me personally, it was only really when I went into the next area where I really noticed a strikingly different aesthetic comparing all of the locations I've been to. It was as if each level had an entirely different artist working behind it. While I think Dark Souls 3 is one of the best games ever made, it has a very disturbing fetish for the color grey. Dark Souls 1's color palette was more varied, but I honestly think Dark Souls 2 has the most variety. And the level design itself completely shifts as well. The previous area was more hilly, with long treks and scattered enemies, with waterfalls and places you could easily fall off. However, this area seems a lot more confined and obstacle-like, not to mention the name of this place is called the Harvest Valley, which doesn't disappoint as there's an abundance of rare materials and powerful items scattered around the place. But with more powerful enemies and more unforgiving terrain, it becomes pretty challenging to attain everything with ease. Here you'll find a rather important NPC, the Stone stone trader Chloanne. Chloanne is an ore stone trader from Volgan, which has been described as a lively, bustling place, however incredibly competitive in her field. So she set out to the faraway and dangerous lands and preferred being here than in the safety of her own town. But eventually she was cursed with the dark sign which lured her to Drang Lake. She never planned to visit this place, but just sort of ended up here. It's here we see the patterns of those infected with the dark sign that links us to the opening of this game. She doesn't remember how she ended up in Drang Lake. She guesses that she just wandered in as if she was a moth drawn to a flame. You eventually come to find out that her father is none other than Lenigrast, the blacksmith in Majula, who came to Drang Lake in search of his daughter, which raises a pretty interesting theory. Perhaps the reason why Lenigrast has not gone insane even though he's hollowed is because he has a purpose as big as finding his daughter occupying his mind. But strangely she returns to her father in Majula and doesn't recognize him right away. She says the hollow over there resembles her father, but that's the only line of dialogue she will have in relation to her father at Majula. She will never outright say that she has found her father or she recognizes this hollow to be her father in any line of dialogue. And although Lenigrast is very grateful that you found his daughter, they never interact. Not once. This could be seen as silly from the game developers to not make them interact, but I think it makes sense. Lenigrast knows his daughter is safe, but doesn't want her to see what's become of him. And maybe for Lenigrast, that's enough. But it's here you will also find one of the coolest designed enemies in this game, the Desert Sorceress. These things can be extremely dangerous if not dealt with quickly, but pretty vulnerable to close quarter combat. These creatures come from the land of Jugo, the same place that Benhart comes from with the giant blue sword. He will be a more integral part of the story later on. However, these creatures were once the servants of Mytha, the Baneful queen, before she ingested poison to seek more beauty. These servants will still follow the code of her beauty, hiding their faces with hoods, and never hesitate to attack an intruder who dares to harm Mytha. The Covetous Demon we are about to encounter, Mytha the Baneful queen, and the Old Iron King are suspected to be in a very juicy love triangle. Mytha was always considered to be an incredibly beautiful lady, but when she slowly realized that the king, or rather her husband, did not love her, she pursued with further beauty at any cost. She became obsessed with becoming increasingly beautiful, eventually poisoning herself into this hideous monstrosity we now see today, making her boss design metal as fuck. How does this relate to the Covetous Demon in any way? As it turns out, this Jabba the Hutt looking motherfucker was once a normal person, and it suggests that he was infatuated by Mytha as he never left the queen's side, and was likely a wealthy right-hand man to the queen, or the duke, or the rook, or whatever the other chess pieces are that's closer to the queen. But instead of poison, or a nasty spell that turned this lonely man into Jabba the Hutt, you want to know what turned him into this? You want to know why he looks like Jabba the Hutt? Food. Because he ate too much food. I shit you not. Anyway, this boss fight is a piece of piss, but the next area is designed extremely well, and is kind of reminiscent of Zen's Fortress in a way. The most interesting and strange creation that you'll find here are the headless mannequins. These things were given life by Mytha, however, since these things had faces and eyes, and apparently looked at Mytha, she tore off their fucking faces. I mean, goddamn. This is probably because she doesn't like the way she looks anymore, which is also probably why she wants to tear off your face for entering the boss arena. Before heading into the boss arena, however, you will feel that tingle. You know that feeling when you're so mad that you get that tingle, almost like a pissy feeling in your balls? Like you just want to piss? Yeah, you'll get pretty pissed off because there's this poison on the ground that won't go away. The first time I played through this game and I got stuck on this boss for God knows how long, I could not for the life of me discover how to counteract this poison on the ground. I thought it was an item maybe I had to equip or a lever that I had to pull, but at worst I thought that this could have been a skill issue. But after putting this game down for a couple months and coming back to it, I decided to ask Google, and I swear I would have never figured this shit out by myself. How do people discover this without any guides? I need to know what kind kind of stuff you're on. After removing the hardest part about this boss fight, this encounter becomes relatively easy. However, I cannot stress how awesome this boss design is, and how cool the area is as well, apart from the poison. And here we are, the Iron Keep. I really don't know where to start. Not only do my opinions on the Iron Keep vary, but so does my emotions. And if you've played this game before, you would understand why. This is by far one of my favorite levels in any game ever, and at the same time one of the most infuriating, downright abysmal, hellish experiences I've ever had as well. To put this into perspective, I played this game before Dark Souls 3 came out, and I finished this after I finished Elden Ring, okay? And it was solely because of this level alone. I have tried and died over and over again that I could literally draw out a map of this entire section all the way until the Old Iron King, including all of the enemy placements off by heart. I could just do it in my head. And this was the most unenjoyable experiences of the game. When it comes to Dark Souls 2, for many players, there's a certain threshold that you can pass. It doesn't occur in any other game. Think of it like layers. The first layer is fear of the unknown. The second layer is observing your surroundings and getting a feel of the map and enemies. The third layer is challenge. Oh yeah, you might die. But the fourth layer is triumph, and the cycle continues when you go to another area. This map, however, decided to add an extra layer or two. After challenging, it was chore-like. After chore-like, it was soul-crushing. There comes a point where after getting angry repeatedly, you eventually stop feeling anything. In fact, the first time ever that I faced this boss, which luckily I recorded, it's what you're seeing right now, I had absolutely no Estus flasks, and I was expecting a sorrow pitiful walk all the way back here, only to get killed by something before I made it back. I had that feeling of, oh, I came so far, only to be so further away. And you want to know what I did? Do you want to know what happened? I defeated this boss. Confusion surrounded my brain. How could the hardest section in quite possibly any game I've ever played feature one of the easiest bosses I have ever encountered? I don't know whether to feel accomplished or strap-oned, but this was the first time that I spent so long on an area, and afterwards I was just numb. Anyway, personal rhetoric aside, let's talk about the lore, because the lore here is actually extremely interesting. This land was once the Kingdom of Ven, and the counterpart of Belfry Luna, Belfry's soul, is situated here as well. On an interesting note, the crazed dwarves here actually still refer to these places by their formal names. And they are seemingly trapped in time. The old Iron King was said to have been born a lord, and decided one fateful sunrise, sipping on his morning coffee, that it would be a good day to try and overthrow the Kingdom of Ven. Along the way, he recruited a man from the far east who happened to have a lot of faith in the Iron King's journey, called Sir Alon, who had remarkable combat skills and was possibly the sole reason his plan had a momentous success rate. Ven was probably having a good time in the castle, just, chilling out, maybe gwitting on the dance floor, and he was probably not ready for the Iron King to come along and kick down the door, catching Ven with his trousers down. Although the Iron King won over the kingdom, the result was not as beneficial as it hoped, because he failed to budget for the future after quitting his full-time job. He had no resources left to maintain his reign, but luckily right after this conquest he discovered an iron-producing miracle called the Scorching Iron Scepter, able to create structures and minions out of iron. He did not hesitate to create monolithic structures and soldiers that were trained by Sir Alon himself, and this is why the knights you fight in this area are called the Alon Knights. After constructing this Iron Kingdom with his Iron Scepter, the man thought of quite a brilliant name for the Iron Kingdom, keeping all of his iron stuff. the Iron Keep. This dude now gained Mad Dog energy and was easily the most powerful ruler of this era if it weren't for one tiny little thing, the curse of the undead slowly ravaging his kingdom. This is exactly why his methods of throwing out and imprisoning those branded with the dark sign was so rash. It was his only weakness at the time. Sir Elon left the Iron King during this time, and since he did so at his peak, it's theorized that the Iron King's descent into madness was the primary reason. I mean, imagine if your best mate built the Colosseum with the Executioner's Chariot to ritually run over the undead repeatedly for all eternity. You might be a bit concerned with who you placed your trust into. The old Iron King losing his most faithful and most powerful servant was furious, and in the Crown of the Old Iron King DLC, you fight Elon as the Iron King. It's possible to suggest that Sir Elon would have beaten the old Iron King in the past, but with the Iron King's lordship status and the scepter granting him 50 million power in Rise of Kingdoms, he swiftly defeats Sir Elon. Elon would then perform seppuku, a ritual suicide, if he was defeated without landing a single hit. Before the memory ends, the king is greeted with a throne left for him in the room right next to the boss arena, a symbol of where he came from before his descent into madness, perhaps Elon's last attempt to redeem his friend. However, after this battle, the king did not attempt to change his ways and kept seeking more power. This would inevitably lead to his demise. The king has now lost an immensely powerful ally, so he devises a plan to create another with his newfound power. Enter stage left, Magus Egil, another one of the king's followers who seek to grant fire a will of its own, giving way to the Iron King's idea of fusing his iron abilities with Aegis's fire abilities. Thus, the old Iron King attempted to give life to iron, and the king's follower, Magus Egil, attempted to give life to fire, fusing it together into a singular being. The old Iron King created the Smelted Demon, and then it bore the strength of uncontrollable flames, and as the earth spouted fire, it turned on its master. The old Iron King, along with most of the kingdom, was then completely submerged with lava and iron, and quite similar to the demise of the Witch of Izalith playing with fire in Dark Souls 1, this flame tarnished the Iron King's soul and turned him into this demonic monstrosity. It hinted rather quite strongly that in the flames he met the Lord of Sunlight Gwyn himself. This is further proven upon after defeating the old Iron King and turning in his soul for Gwyn's blinding bolt. The description proves that this is the exact same bolt Gwyn used and says that he forbade anyone from using it. So how could the old Iron King attain something Gwyn forbade? Some theorize on him meeting Gwyn, and others suggest that he was always Gwyn this entire time. Another interesting theory, and quite a popular one I might add, is that the Smelted Demon was actually infused with the soul of Sir Elon. Perhaps the old Iron King attempted to revive him, but Sir Elon could have remembered his defeat and attacked the old Iron King out of revenge. There is some evidence supporting this theory, being that the demon's transitions into stronger forms show him performing the same seppuku that Elon once did. And if you get hold of Sir Elon's sword in the game, its special power-up move that buffs the sword damage actually features a seppuku animation as well. Some also say that their attack patterns are pretty similar, however it's just a theory. Again, I think it's important to point out that all of these events happened a very, very long time ago. In fact, so long ago that this is before King Vendrick's time. Most importantly, you might have noticed that the old Iron King is just called that, the old Iron King. No one even remembers his name. Now it's time for this place to be left behind. You light the second primal bonfire and return to Majula to head down the pit, varying in worth depending on their length. You know what else to bet? The first place we will explore will be the Grave of Saints, a rat-infested area home to the Rat King Covenant, where you will find the Rat King. He eventually asks if you would pledge yourself to the Rat King and join his covenant, and if you join him and reach rank 2, he will open up some new dialogue and reveal somewhat hidden history between the rats and humans within the Dark Souls lore. It suggested that humans begun attacking the rats after making a deal with them, and this Rat King has an awfully bad view of humankind. Even when you first rocked up, he couldn't help but say humans bring nothing but filth. And in a way this makes sense. I mean, rats are known for digging, through filthy stuff and trash, but humans are the ones who put them there in the first place. And the pit is no different. It's said that the pit in Majula is simply used as a giant trash can containing all of the discarded rot and corpses below into the gutter. There is a boss fight here too called the Royal Rat Vanguard, a mob boss fight of endless rat. After 10 rats are killed, the boss's health is revealed, and you need to look out for a different looking rat with spiked hair on the top of his head to pinpoint the difference. Overall, this is a very easy boss fight, a lot easier than the second rat boss fight that we will encounter later on. You learn that the Rat King once had another human amongst them, and there is also a skeleton of a giant person here in this area as well. Perhaps it was that person. There are those, and even Vati Vidya, that believe this human could have been Pharros the Vagabond, creator of the Pharros Lockstone, as both in this area and in the other area where we will see another rat boss fight, there are numerous Pharros Lockstone slots to be found. And then there are those on the other hand who believe the Grave of Saints could also be a part of the Tomb of Giants from Dark Souls 1, pointing at the giant skeleton as evidence. Take those two theories with a grain of salt, however I personally don't have that much faith in either theory. This place is called the Grave of Saints after all, and to who these saints may be is never explained. Further down the pit we will end up in the gutter, one of the most intriguing and dismal areas of Dark Souls 2. It's here the torches are extremely useful, as it's by far the darkest location in the game. But yet again, I'm just built different. It's here that the rubbish and the corpses are all discarded, and the undead here seem to be trying to make somewhat of a living out of this place. You can find beds and tables, and perhaps these makeshift houses were built by them. It's theorized that these people were thrown into the gutter while being still alive, and attempted to build these platforms in an attempt to escape, only to become hollow over time. But most of all, you'll find one of the most beautiful enemies in this game, and something I wish was in every game I've ever played. The poison-spitting statues. Truly, such a remarkable, lovable addition to this game. And what's great about these statues is that they're everywhere, spitting poison at you from very convenient places, and it doesn't matter how fast or slow you are going, if you dodge or roll or block, the amazing part is they will get you. Such a lovely creation from the dev team. But appraisal of these magnificent creations aside, the next area features a boss called the Rotten, who has a very cool backstory with it as well. The Rotten is seen attempting to create more poison statues in this cutscene, but more importantly, the Rotten's design starts to help us make sense of things. This creature is comprised of multiple corpses, embracing all of them to become one complete entity. And the design is rather similar to the Gravelord Nito. All of the final bosses of each area relate to Dark Souls 1, the Lost Sinner relating to the Witch of Izalith, the Iron King being Gwyn, and now the Rotten being Gravelord Nito. Additionally, players attribute the Rotten to being Pharros as well, as there's many connections between the two. If you cut off the Rotten's arm, he will drop the Pharros Lockstone. Pharros was also known for his inventions, and had a gift for creating traps, and would explain why the Black Gulch and the Gutter are littered with poison-spitting statues. And apart from these two areas, the statues are also found in one other location, the Doors of Pharros. Another note to point out is there seems to be a humanoid being on the Rotten's left shoulder, mimicking his movements, and it's suspected that this thing is the controller of the giant beast. or Pharros himself. Whether this is Pharros or not is still debated, however this is one theory I do personally believe in. This whole area from the pit to the gutter to the Black Gulch and even the Grave of Saints is such a murky contrast to the rest of the game, and I really love the shift in art style already. We're not even halfway through the game and it seems that we have more diversity in locations than most other video games in general, not only in the art style but the map layout and structure. It's fascinating how all of these areas in the pits represent the unwanted trash and corpses of the overworld, yet vary in what they want to symbolize. The gutter symbolizing lost hope, the Black Gulch symbolizing corruption, and the Grave of Saints making you think about morality, who's right or who's wrong between the rats and humans. I may be overthinking certain things about this place, but now it's time for us to light the bonfire and return to Majula to take the last path of our journey through to the Shaded Woods. Venturing to the Shaded Woods, you will cross paths with Benhart of Jugo, carrying a very distinctive giant blue sword, who has his own quest, and upon completion you will receive his gear, which is pretty nifty, I'm not gonna lie. He informs you that the path ahead is blocked by a statue, but using the fragrant branch of Yore to clear the way, you discover that this petrified person is neither hostile or hollow, but a lady known as Rosabeth of Melfia. You find out that she is a pyromancer and was attacked but doesn't recollect who from. Her old master is actually the dude who doesn't talk to you if you have low intelligence, chilling on the pier in No Man's Wharf. And if you go back to Benhart, he will now be very happy that the pathway has been cleared, and you will find him in various locations throughout the rest of this journey. One of the most interesting NPCs that you will encounter within the Shaded Woods is a mysterious hybrid of a man known as Manscorpion Tark. He will not be able to speak to you at all, however, unless you have the Ring of Whispers equipped, and then he reveals something quite interesting about his creator. He speaks of a master that created him and everything else in the Shaded Woods as well. A master born with a fatal flaw. He resented those who had what he lacked. Previously, people believed Aldia to have made these things, and a number of other experiments were dumped here as well. But does this individual sound familiar? Resenting those of what he lacked. It's quite possible that Seath created these beings long ago, and many more around Dark Souls 2. However, another theory attributes Aldia as being the creator of many things as well, such as the Forlorn scattered around every location. Both liked creating their own respective monstrosities, so I believe it is a big mix of the two. But what's more interesting about this character is hidden in his name. Manscorpion Tark could have very well be a tinkered version of Black Iron Tarkus. Some people swear both for and against this, but I find the evidence inconclusive, seeing as they wear different armor and carry different weapons. Tark also speaks of his better half called Scorpioness Najka, and comes to you as a brother for relationship advice. Recently, Najka has been acting very different from her usual self, turning violent at times. So brother from another mother, you settle this domestic dispute the way any best mate could. With murder. Yeah. Scorpion Najka is the boss of the Shaded Woods, and I've got to say, Seath the Scaleless did an amazing job with his creation in this boss design as well, because this goes pretty damn hard. Kind of reminds me of Quelaag in a way. I mean, she has very similar animations. I think it's worth mentioning that Tark, being more mentally stable, has a more even-bodied distribution between the scorpion and human parts of himself, whereas Najka is mostly scorpion. Perhaps this is the main reason her mind has left her, but the sad thing is Tark actually does refer to Scorpioness Najka as his other half, and even though he asks you and then thanks you for killing her, he still refers to her as that. Defeating Scorpioness Najka opens up a gate to the door of Pharros, yet again demonstrating the artistic diversity of this game. As the name implies, there are many doors in this area requiring Pharros Lockstone to open, some hiding treasures and some activating traps. However, its flooded environment with walkways halfway up the walls and almost ancient yet masterful looking design is something that never fails to impress. If you're a member of the Rat King Covenant, the enemies will not attack you here. You'll be able to get through this entire area without a scratch, I mean apart from the boss. One of these doors leads to the Royal Rat Authority boss, and surprisingly to me, a lot of people found this boss to be extremely difficult, some swearing it's one of the most difficult bosses in the game. This is mainly because its fast and big sweeping attacks leave little to no breathing room for dodges, and there are a handful of little rats that come in so fast they can knock you into his hit range as well. This is definitely one of the bosses that's harder for those wielding close range weapons. However, I feel that since this bonfire is right next to this boss, unlike most of the others, it makes it a hell of a lot easier. The design of this boss is kind of festy, I'm not gonna lie. It's a massive cross of a dog and a rat, servant of the Rat King. Defeating this boss could actually be an alternate means of joining the Rat King Covenant, after obtaining its tail. If you trade in his souls, the equipment is a big indication of the Royal Rat Authority's intentions with his enemies. One is the Toxic Mist, a poison that gradually erodes the target's body while inflicting damage. And it says at the end of the description that whoever created this spell did not believe that his enemies should deserve a swift death. And note that it says his. It's pretty much stating that this rat is this rat dog is a dude. The other Gavlan clones here will not attack you if you're a part of the Covenant, but most importantly,
With Gavlan, you will, you deal.
next up is Brightstone Cove, and people seem to have very mixed opinions when it comes to this whole area, in its layout, gameplay and lore. Some believe the layout to be flawed and claim that it's simply a shit undead burg, and some find the area to be confusing and the traversal mechanics to be clunky, such as the ziplines. And I'm not gonna lie, I do think that the first boss is trash, possibly one of the worst boss fights in any FromSoft game to date. However, I do view this place as being pretty decent. I really like the intricate level design, and it seems that there's many different paths to discover with heaps of stuff to find, such as Titanite material. I mean, I can't really get enough of that shit. On the other hand, I do agree that it's not as interconnected as the other levels, but the final boss fight is definitely awesome, and a whole entire town being overrun by giant spiders sounds pretty metal, I'm not gonna lie. This place was once a mining colony. This place was once a mining colony, founded by a man called Saldora, who discovered this substance called the Brightstone. However, the economic boom of this region was not too beneficial, as everyone, including Saldora, became greedy and continued to seek more. The mining activities led to the discovery of Freya, a spider who could have been found inside an ancient dragon. Saldora kept this spider for himself as he was fascinated by them. But the soul of Seath the Scaleless, or quite possibly Seath the Scaleless himself, attached himself to Freya, and as Freya grew in power and size, she gave birth to thousands of spiders that eventually overrun the town and led to the tragic downfall of this place. The spiders not only made burrows through the region, jump scaring civilians and feasting on them, but they would also penetrate their brain with pincers and control them as puppets, using them as human shields. After these events is when the Prowling Mages comes in, a warlock from Aldea who came to Brightstone Cove as a figurehead and leader of the force, offering people healing and protection. However, it's quite possible that the true reason the Prowling Mages came in the first place was of ill intent. He could have simply taken advantage of the distress caused by the invasion and manipulated the people for his own pleasures. After all, looking at the boss design of this so-called cleric, it looks a lot more demonic than saint-like. But I mean, it is Dark Souls, so. The walk towards the spider boss is definitely one of the most memorable in this game. I just love the design on the outside of the building of all the crystals sticking up from the walkway on either side, the spiders hanging out on the ceiling waiting for you to walk by, and the long path towards the bottom made up of webs with spiders trapping you at all angles. I don't care what anyone says about this area, this for me is one of the gnarliest boss treks of all time. The Duke's Deer Freya is a giant spider with two heads on opposite ends of its body, and it's made a home right next to the ancient dragon's body where it may have been found nesting. This is entirely my own speculation, but seeing that this spider has the Lord Soul of Seath the Scaleless, and since there's an abundance of crystals in this whole area, that of which was found near Seath the Scaleless in Dark Souls 1, and was a special move of his, it's very possible that this dragon is Seath. But I do admit that it doesn't look like Seath at the same time, and when you go back in time time to the memories, it really doesn't look like him at all. But it's just a theory. Manscorpion Tark could have actually been friends with this spider before Seath took control of its mind, as he mentions that there was a creature with the form of a spider with power similar to his and Najka's. However, he disappeared and wonders if it was seduced by madness like Najka was. Notice how he doesn't refer to this creature as his master. This could indicate that there was a time where Freya and Seath were two different entities. After defeating this boss, Duke Taldora can be found in the Lord's private chamber, hollowed and hostile, and upon death he drops the Brightstone key. It's clear to see that he was obsessed with knowledge, and there's books everywhere in his private chambers. Whether that's of his own accord or being exposed to Seath the Scaleless' soul is unknown. But now it's time for you to light your fourth and final primal bonfire after a long and expansive journey, and this is where things start to get pretty hectic. Lord Aldir, King Vendrick's older brother, has spawned from this bonfire. This creature helped his brother in founding the Kingdom of Drang Lake. However, after doing so, he secluded himself in his manor in the search for the secrets of life, suspecting the undead curse as the key to finding it. However, there was a little family drama between the two brothers when it came to Aldir's research methods, and Vendrick locked Aldir away in his keep, and spoilers, it's not the worst place to be locked away. It was here that Aldir apparently kept giants in his manor and attempted to recreate a dragon. But after some time he was never heard from again, or rather never heard from until now. He mentions that no one has come this far in a very long time and asks you whether you want to break the curse that binds you. He implores you to embrace the destiny of your kind and confront the challenges that lie ahead. And before giving you the next task, he gives you a moral and ethical dilemma: inheriting the order of this world or destroying it altogether. This is a very different way of thinking than King Seeker Frampt, who pretty much says it's his way or the highway, prolonging the Age of Fire. Here he gives you a multiple choice option before disappearing again. He ends his monologue with urging you to search for King Vendrick, who will be able to guide you on your journey. Two things went through my mind when I initially encountered Aldir. The first was, holy crap, that was cool. And the second is, I couldn't help but compare Aldir to King Seeker Frampt. I like to think of Aldir as an evil version of King Seeker Frampt. I mean, he is assisting with guiding you on your journey, acting as a friend, but like, he's done some pretty bad things too, which we will find out pretty soon. And I assure you, his next few lines of dialogue are very important to the story. Next, you will go through the Shaded Woods again, then through the Shrine of Winter, and finally reaching Drain Lake Castle, which has probably one of the coolest walks up to a castle in any Souls-like game. The dramatic walk up the steps to the castle through the rain and thunder give a sense of grandeur, but people do say that it feels empty and unfinished. But I somewhat feel it being empty is reminiscent of what it once was. I mean, Anor Londo felt empty, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not supposed to be the bustling city it once was. Before making our way up, however, we are greeted by none other than the Emerald Herald, the Firekeeper back in Majula, and she urges you to seize this opportunity to end this journey once and for all, for the sake of both of you. I want to highlight that in this moment right here, you realize none of the other Firekeepers from Dark Souls felt as if they were an integral part of the story. Meanwhile, it seems like the Emerald Herald is not only wanting you to succeed, but is willing to be by your side through this journey. She even says to you that she will always be by your side and won't leave until all hope from this world has completely withered away. And I don't know about you, but that's a powerful thing to add in this game. Before entering the gates, you'll come to a really cool mechanical design with the levels that's not present within any other FromSoft game from what I can remember. Out the front of the doors, there are two statues on either side, and you must kill enemies in front of both of them so the soul from that enemy activates the statue. This is pretty cool. It's a lot better than just pulling a simple lever or going up up to the double doors and slowly pushing them open, it makes venturing around the castle quite fun. The first NPC you meet is right at the entrance of the castle, a chancellor named Welliger. He firstly questions your presence in the castle and informs you that the king is absent and has been taken by the queen. This reveals that something significant has happened to King Vendrick, but as he starts to talk about King Vendrick's accomplishments, he then says something low-key crazy. King Vendrick defeated the 4 Great Ones. But if I'm not mistaken, that was us. We literally just did that, didn't we? Then you think, wait, hold up. Is he talking about the other Great Ones? Like Nito, Gwyn, and the Witch of Islith, and Seath the Scaleless? Could Vendrick be the main character from Dark Souls 1? But some players swear that the main character from Dark Souls 1 who linked the fire threw himself into the fire and became what's known as the Sublime Bone Dust, as their description reads. They say these are the remains of a saint who cast himself into the bonfire. But why do I even bother to mention this? Well, there's a total of 5 Sublime Dust that you can collect on each playthrough, which means 5 separate links to the flame could have occurred, which also means that there could have been 5 sets of Great Ones in total, from Gwyn's era to our era. The Chancellor then starts to go a little bit crazy and says things like this.
King Vendrick, we must fight back, or the giants will take Drangleic.
So from this line of dialogue, it's clear to see that he's trapped in time, and from here he starts questioning if this is a dream.
Is this some sort of a dream?
Where am I? What has happened to our castle?
And eventually he starts to forget who you are and asks why you're in the castle. Further along the castle, you will come by more statues being brought to life in order to stop you. Other high-ranking Drangleic knights called Cyan soldiers, modelled after one of King Vendrick's bravest military leaders, Sir Cyan. You will cross paths with some wall spectres, a ghost of a former warrior which will pass in and out of the walls. Eventually you will cross paths with a mysterious-looking NPC sitting in a faraway throne, who happens to be the Queen, Nashandra. She commemorates you on your journey and explains that a true monarch bears the weight of their own souls, and King Vendrick was less of a man than you could imagine, and he never took the true throne. This is hard to understand, but Aldir also said a similar thing. He explained that Vendrick was almost a true monarch. What this means we will find out soon, but for now you have to fight one of Vendrick's faithful warriors through the next fog wall. And it so happens to be the first recycled boss of this game. This boss fight was pretty damn easy, I'm not gonna lie. One dragon rider used a great bow from an elevated platform which you can easily destroy, and the other is pretty much the exact same from Heide's Tower of Flame without the chance of falling down. However, little do you know that after fucking around with an elevator for an hour or two and going through the King's Passage, that one of the coolest bosses is right around the corner, the Looking Glass Giant. But I will make note of this. Dark Souls 2 has a strange habit of just throwing a bunch of enemies right before a boss fight, leaving you with the only choice of just running through the fog wall. This doesn't happen with the other games as much as this one, and it seems a bit strange, but let's continue with the Looking Glass Giant, as it's a really cool boss. This enemy is described as a spectacular monstrosity that serves as King Vendrick's lieutenant, and its duty is to test the prowess of those who seek to serve with Drangleic's royal knights. This is a good thing to highlight, as this was actually a test for the game itself before its initial release, to see if filthy casuals were good enough at the game, and spoilers, those from IGN and Polygon forgot how to use the buttons and blamed Donald Trump. Now this is probably the coolest bosses of all time. Its design is incredible, but the weapon and shield are distinctively awesome in their own respects. The sword fashioned with barbed wire and the giant shield acting as a mirror. And halfway through the fight, it has an enemy bust out of this glass mid-fight to help the knight take you out. Everything about him screams intimidation, and this is honestly one of the harder bosses in the game, which was great to have as its defeat is incredibly satisfying. The sole description of the Looking Glass Knight reads, "Long ago, the King's Passage was a route taken by the bravest warriors to prove themselves. But now it only prevents one from pursuing the runaway king. Noticeably, you'll see the knight's armor and weaponry strongly ties it to Christianity, with its helmet having a crown of thorns with tears rolling down its face representing the crying of Jesus. It also features 3 faces representing the Holy Trinity and wings on the back giving it an angelic design. Its role as a gatekeeper leaves some mysterious unanswered questions about its identity, but the most compelling theory that I've found is the Looking Glass Knight could be the King's loyal knight Sir Cyan. The King's loyal knight, Sir Cyan, was the leader of the fighting party against the giants, but he was slaughtered in a horrible way. The king then commissioned replicas of Cyan's weapons and armor and bestowed them on the promising knights. However, interestingly, not long after they donned the armor, most soldiers went thoroughly mad. Firstly, you could assume, this one being the most powerful knight in the castle, that this could be the true Cyan. Secondly, the king's armor is said to be a passage to another world, which could be a connection between reality and the things we couldn't tangibly connect with. This could explain how Sir Cyan's spirit was captured within the armor. And finally, the symbolism of Jesus within his headgear could represent a selfless being who died for the sins of others. Sir Cyan was selfless in his defense of the kingdom, throwing his life away. All the while, the king's sins of theft were the cause of this horrible war in the first place. It's a cool idea to play around with, but at the same time, this could all easily be dismissed as no evidence is concrete. After defeating the Looking Glass Giant and his bitch boy Spawn, we must travel through everyone's favourite location, the Shrine of Amana. The Shrine of Amana can be compared to the Iron Keep for a number of reasons. There is a huge difficulty spike in the Shrine of Amana when compared to Drang Lake's castle, similar to the comparison of the Iron Keep and Earthen Peak. The 2 most difficult enemies in this location from personal experience were the large knights and most certainly the mages with homing soul arrows. The poorly lit floor is another obstacle as you can fall to your death from barely visible drops along the cliffside. Safe to say your character grew up in the desert and doesn't know how to breaststroke. The Forlorn could also invade this area, adding insult to injury. The water makes it all the more difficult to run and dodge from enemies, and the bonfire locations are far and few in between. However, it's my personal and professional opinion that the Shrine of Amana is a piece of piss, and I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. All I heard was Shrine of Amana. Oh, you thought the Iron Keep was hard? Oh, just wait until Shrine of Amana. It's the hardest level in any Souls game. And people seemed so petrified of this level that they claimed it scarred them for life. And when I came here too, I was shitting my pants because of all the hype the community built up for it that I just didn't feel the same way when I finished it. For one, the bonfire next to the level boss is nowhere near as far away as the Iron Keep bonfire. And not to mention, in Iron Keep, you were almost forced to fight off the enemies on your way to the Iron King. The mages can be in very inconvenient areas, don't get me wrong, and the large mace-wielding knights love to gang up on you, but overall, I really don't know how else to put it, but getting to the Demon of Song was a walk in the park almost every time. But at the same time, I don't get the hate for this area at all. I think visually it looks beautiful. It's easily one of the most aesthetic and unique locations in Dark Souls 2. The singing, the lights, the enemies, the creepy NPCs, it has a very distinctively beautiful yet eerie feel to it. And while the boss's movesets are fairly easy to get the hang of, the design is one of the coolest and strangest in the whole series. But let's start with the Milfinito. Needless to say, that's one word. These women are beings created long ago by the Great Dead One, and given the creator's name, it's strongly implied to be Gravelord Nito. The Great Dead One taught them to sing in order to provide comfort to those cursed with the dark sign, and when they sang, bright bugs dance and pacify the undead lizard men in the area. They live only to sing and have no real sense of self. They will continue to sing until they can no longer, and they will never leave the Shrine of Amana. However, one was captured and forcefully put in a cage atop the Drang Lake Castle, with the key in the hands of the Demon of Song. This creature hides within the body of a giant toad. We can only see its face and arms, but it seems to successfully successfully know the moveset of a frog, as one of its moves is a jump attack. Outside the demon's lair, there is a Milfinito that can be found that isn't able to sing, but when we walk through to the boss fight, the boss can be heard singing as if it were a Milfinito. This leads us to speculate that the demon could have stolen the Milfinito's voice, repurposing it for its own misdeeds. He is called the Demon of Song because he sings with his beautiful voice to lure people close so that he may devour them, which is a pretty messed up strat, I'm not gonna lie. This boss isn't easy by any means for those unfamiliar with its moveset, but it becomes extremely predictable after a try or two. After this fight, heading toward the undead crypt, you will cross paths with Aldia for the second time, and right before questioning your morality and offering some meaningless advice, he is about to deliver one of the best voice acted lines in all of gaming history.
Once the Lord of Light vanished dark, and all that stemmed from humanity. And men assumed a fleeting form. These are the roots of our world. Men are props in the stage of life, and no matter how tender, how exquisite, a lie will remain a lie.
From Software never fails to hire the best voice actors that just fit inside every single role, and it's clear that this game is no exception. The most important thing to note about what he just said is that Gwyn could have been the catalyst for the first sin, the prolonging of the Age of Fire, which the game clearly suggests is an unchangeable cycle. The first sin could have very well been Gwyn playing God. Aldia then lets you know that Vendrick is close by and goes on his merry way. The Undead Crypt is a massive mausoleum situated below the Shrine of Amana, providing a strange way of rest for the living, including Vendrick for a reason we're about to find out. The crypt is overseen by a grave warden Agadane, who treats all the occupants with equal care, including you. However, takes the security here very seriously. Security from what, you ask? I absolutely love how a berserk type sword just gets pulled from thin air. It's amazing. So yeah, if you don't produce any light or light a torch, you're all good to come down here and chill as much as you like. When you talk to him, he reveals his reasons. He does not want you to produce any light because he believes it agitates the dead and disrupts their peace. He mentions that the undead residing in the crib are cradled by the comfort of dark and have no need for light. He also reveals that he is a finito, another being thought to be created by Lord Nito. And you'll notice at the end of Milfinito and Finito is Nito, so you never know. I mean, the coinky dink. Eventually he tells the player that Vendrick is near, but he may not be in the mood for company. Meanwhile, the enemies we faced out the front of the undead crypt were not so friendly to us compared to Agdane's gang, the Ladia Pyromancer and the Ladia Witch, who definitely have one of the most mysterious and unexplored backstories out of any group of enemies in this game. They are only found outside of the undead crypt, and according to their item descriptions, even though they once resided beside Agadane, they began to manipulate the onset of the curing of the curse. Their disrespect towards the dead not only branded them as transgressors of the crypt, but they were hunted down and slaughtered. These beings worshipped the god of disease known as Galib, and called upon him to cause the manipulation of the disease. But aside from that, not much is known, and I really wish there was some sort of DLC that explored this or spent some more time on it. The final boss before finding Vendrick is Sir Veldstad, a clerical knight from a faraway land who was lured to Drang Lake and served King Vendrick as his royal aegis, and even up until now he is defending the king. Again, it honestly annoys me to say this over and over again, but he is not a hard boss. Even as King Vendrick's last line of defense, his moveset is pretty predictable. And finally, after a long journey, we have finally reached what we assume to be the end. However, things take a very depressing turn for the worst, and what we are about to bear witness to is quite a disturbing sight. The whole aim of this adventure, the desperation that is within every single character, it all revolves around finding a cure for the undead curse. We have been told many times that there was once a king of a mighty kingdom who is quite possibly our best and only hope for a cure. But before there was a slight chance to regain our humanity, humanity and regain our past life and live a normal one, we come across the man himself, only seeing an echo of what was once a great and powerful soul. And the shocking part about it is he's not starting to forget who he is, he's not slowly slipping away, he is completely and utterly gone. The most disturbing part of this is he did this to himself, willingly, but we will get to why very soon. You don't actually have to attack Vendrick just yet. After all, he will be extremely powerful without doing certain things first. You must pick up the King's Ring, which opens certain doors to continue on with your journey, and we will now head to Aldea's Keep. This haunted, eerie mansion in the middle of the forest is where Aldea was locked away and supposedly kept a giant and tried to make dragons. Just a reminder, Aldea was locked away to this location in disagreements with what he and Vendrick deemed to be the true way of finding out the secrets of life and overcoming the curse. Aldea viewed the undead curse as the key to this mystery when he was locked away. He was far from finished. The experiments Aldea performed led to the creation of monstrous creatures that you'll find in this keep, some of which are dubbed unspeakable. All the beings encountered here are associated with ritualistic experiments, and the dragon acolytes were responsible for conducting the highly secretive research. It's rumored that over time an unknown force began manipulating them, but their main goal remains unknown. It's here we also encounter Lucatiel of Mirrah for the 5th and final time, and she seems to be slipping away, forgetting who you are, and then snapping back and asking for you to remember her name because she may not herself. Another fascinating NPC is called Gavlan, a royal sorcerer who was possessed by a malevolent entity during an experiment, causing him to have a split personality. One day the entity he calls Gavlan completely took over and went on a murder spree. This is why he is locked away. The good personality took it upon himself to seal himself behind a magical barrier. The inside of this castle is magnificently diverse in terms of scenery and the enemies you'll find, probably one of the most underrated mansions in any Souls game to date. But what really catches you off guard is this giant skeletal dragon being summoned to life and dropping a key which will lead you to the next location. Before being chased down by Aldea's experiments gone wrong in a pretty cool segment where they're busting down walls and jump scaring you, you'll eventually come to a crazy realization. Aldea's attempts with making dragons may have actually worked. This creature called the Guardian Dragon is a wyvern trapped atop of Aldea's castle, and it's obviously guarding something pretty hectic. This is where I want to break away and praise something that this game does really well. Almost every single time without fail, all of the bosses and their arenas fit so damn well together. They look and feel the part, even if they're downright easy, I'll admit. Think of the Smelter Demon, representing the aesthetic of the design and the castle, and bursting into flames each phase of the fight, representing the fire around the Iron Keep. Or the same location with the old Iron King, a lava demon emerging from lava. The Chariot boss running around in circles around the Colosseum, and the knights that are placed in the castles, almost always defending something with royalty. I could go on, but I feel like it's something I need to highlight quickly before we move on to the next location, which is easily one of the more jaw-dropping, downright ethereal locations in any Dark Souls game. It kind of reminds me of a mix between the crumbling Farum Azula from Elden Ring and the Archdragon Peak in Dark Souls 3. You will have two important conversations with two different people here, and the first is the Emerald Herald. She explains she's waited a very long time for someone like you to succeed who may shatter the shackles of fate and set her free. She then explains that it was her own manifestation that led you here, and the ancient dragon has watched over the world for an indefinite period of time. Then it's time for you to make your way across to the supposed ancient dragon, and if I mentioned, the aesthetic and surroundings was awesome. The environmental and even mechanics of this area is incredible, with long loosely made wooden bridges swinging in the wind and makeshift zip lines getting you from platform to platform. If people who gave up on this game before it got up to here came back and saw that this was happening, they would be shocked because certain mechanics in this area aren't even present within Elden Ring, and it somehow blends this RPG into an action-adventure game style in a way that doesn't go over the top, it just feels perfect. There are a handful of wyverns that you can fight here before making your way to the building in the distance, and when you light the first bonfire, Aldia returns for the final time. He congratulates you just as the Emerald Herald did, and then he goes into a philosophical talk again. He speaks of the curse again and how there are false beliefs and desires for love, yet asks if it's wrong to believe in the illusion of life. It's a constructed facade, yet a facade that offers us warmth and comfort in an otherwise dismal world. He then tells us that he tried to escape his fate but failed, and now he's eager to see your decision. Seek the throne and explore both the light and dark and what lies beyond. Aldia and Kingseeker Fram from Dark Souls 1 have very similar roles with the involvement of the undead and linking the first flame, like I mentioned before, but what I want to discuss is why Aldia may be a lot more interesting of a character when compared to Kingseeker Fram. Aldia was once human, like his brother Vendrick. He's had direct involvement with the curse, and it's entirely possible he took on this form to escape it. This gives a sense of great relatability between the main protagonist and Aldia. Kingseeker Fram, on the other hand, is more pragmatic in his philosophy, and is friends of Gwyn, friends with the man who committed the first sin, the very reason why we are here in the first place. I'm gonna say Aldia is more evil, of course, but more altruistic. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below if you have any other way of thinking. However, I will say having the duality between Karth and Frampt is a bonus that Dark Souls 1 does have going for it. Two primordial serpents with differing views gives the player a more moral dilemma and makes you question what is good and what is bad. But let's continue with the story and head to the Ancient Dragon, one of the coolest treks up to the top of the mountain yet. The massive Drake Keepers guarding the dragon and the Dragon Knights creepily bowing to you as you make your way. Interestingly, they will not attack you if you killed the Drake Keepers before making it to the top. If you refuse to fight and just run off, they will view that act as dishonorable and gang up on you, making it extremely hard to get through them all. And here it is, you see what seems to be an ancient dragon. He speaks to you in code and offers some form of guidance in it. He suggests for you to peer into the fog in search of answers and gifts you an ashen mist heart, which you can use to delve into the memories of an ancient being in order to defeat Vendrick. Interestingly, here's where things get whack. You can choose to kill this ancient dragon if you want, to make the boss fight with Vendrick easier, which is one of the most bullshit boss fights of all time, and not for a good reason. You pretty much just have to come up and clip his toenails, and when it flies up in the air, you better hope to God you've got an automobile, cause goddamn. Anyway, upon defeating this ancient dragon, it does not drop a dragon soul, it drops a giant soul. Nashandra calls the dragon a false deity, indicating that this dragon is not who it seems and is a copy. Ironic coming from Nashandra, of all people. However, she's right. It's strongly implied that this ancient dragon was revived by Aldia with a giant soul, and it's not, in fact, an ancient dragon. There are 4 memories that we need to access with the Ashen Mist Heart now, and first we will explore the memory of Vamar, where you'll get thrown back in time inside a battle within the Forest of the Fallen Giants, where the giants are attacking. You go through a tunnel and find Captain Drummond, who immediately recognizes you aren't supposed to be here. He advises that you should leave as the tower is about to fall down, and interestingly enough, it's theorized his armor is the one that we find under the Persuer boss in the Forest of the Fallen Giants. Totally not the one that everyone wants to grab because it's totally not overpowered, but it's important to note that since you do have this conversation with him, and you're able to take items from the past and bring it back to the future, you're not just visiting someone's memories, but you're literally time traveling. Coming outside of the castle to see the destruction of the forest in action by the giants is something really cool that they didn't need to add, but I'm really thankful that they did. I appreciate that this dev team took notes from Dark Souls 1 Ulysile DLC to go back and explore things as they were. However, the biggest downside to these memories is that they are only temporary. You don't get to run around and explore and interact or even fight enemies for that long before being pulled out and having to start the memory all over again. It feels as if you just need to rush through everything and find the giant lying down down somewhere, as there's no timer on the screen, there's no real indication of which dead giant has the giant soul that you need. And of course this goes without saying, but these are the supposed giants that Vendrick fought against. It would have been pretty cool if we saw him fight the giants, even if it was in the distance. The next memory is that of Oro, and it's in this memory that you get to see the scale of the buildings as they were when compared to now. And we already established that the giants came and ravaged things a little, but seeing how tall the buildings in this location used to be is pretty compelling. But this is easily not the strangest thing that you will find in this memory. You will cross paths with Benhart of Jugo, a man who we bumped into before in the Forest of the Fallen Giants, wielding the large iconic blue sword. How the hell is this dude here? I mean, he didn't tag along with us and he certainly looks the same age, but my guess for this is Benhart is not from this world. He's similar to what Knight Solaire was in Dark Souls 1. Someone going on a very similar journey, and our worlds happen to be overlapping. This would explain how he acquired the Ashen Mist Heart, as it's not like we missed a second ancient dragon up on that mountain. But you want to know something even more trippy? He doesn't look hollow to me, so it's very possible this man is doing a zero death speedrun as we speak. The memory of Jay, we see a return from someone else as well. When making our way through the memories, we will come across a giant boss battle called the Giant Lord. We've only fought one other giant previously, and that was the last giant, but if we read his soul description, it states the following: the Lord of the Giants, who had brought wreck and ruin to the entire kingdom, was said to have been felled by an unknown warrior. His beaten and broken remains were then dragged beneath the stronghold where he was sealed away. I'm not reading the Giant Lord's soul description, this is the last giant. So this would explain why the last giant in the beginning of the game screamed at you when you entered and even tore off his own arm in a last-ditch effort to destroy you. He remembers you from this very moment when you came to fight him and defeated him. This is storytelling done right, and it gives me chills every time I remember this fact. Another memory you can go into is the Ancient Dragon memory from the Duke's Dear Freya boss location, and although not a lot is known about this particular dragon beyond speculation, it's clear to see that you've gone a lot further than the other memories. This dragon was just slain by the OG lords from Dark Souls 1. I would have loved to see more going on with this memory as well, and while I think the memory of Jay and Oro give a little insight into two completely different characters, the whole time traveling back in time thing is really cool. But it seems like this was a huge missed opportunity to do something greater. Like, imagine if you come in and saw a split second of Gwyn or the Nameless King riding in the distance. It would have been such a simple yet fun touch to an otherwise boring memory. A very interesting theory about the memories, however, is that the memories you are visiting are your own. You've forgotten your past after you've become undead, and you don't know how long you have been in this hollowed state for. It would make sense how you're able to freely go into the past while not altering the present. You're not time traveling, you're remembering. There does seem to be a very big emphasis at the start of the journey how your past is swept away by the curse of the undead. Perhaps Vendrick cast you out not wanting to get sick. But although this is a really interesting theory to play around with, I doubt it's the case, as there's another memory we will view soon after defeating Vendrick that contradicts this. From here we venture back to King Vendrick, as he's definitely going to be a lot easier with the help of these souls. You can get more, and that's what I did, but it makes this boss fight go from stupidly hard to stupidly easy. There are those that think this game would have been better off without the memories and they seem a bit pointless, and this is something I somewhat need to agree with. To get the most challenge out of the fight, it would be best to just get a couple of the souls from the memories, but that's just a silly thing to do because you're missing out on the story. But nevertheless, this boss fight is still eerie as the music doesn't change, and the creepy piano song is here to stay. Upon defeating him, you're able to peer into his memories and even have a conversation with him. But this begs the question, why did King Vendrick lock himself away? Well, it all leads back to Queen Nashandra, the unassuming tall lady in Drangleic Castle. Like I previously mentioned, Nashandra is a fragment of Mana, the father of the Abyss, who desired power and travelled to Drangleic only to seduce King Vendrick. She convinced Vendrick to travel to the land of the giants to steal something of great power, and all the while became queen. Nashandra desired the first flame and planned to claim it by using Kinvendrick and the Throne of Want, which serves as a means to link the first flame. Whether it was blinded by love or ignorance, it took a fair while for the king to realise Nashandra's true nature and identity. Vendrick travelled all the way down here to keep himself locked away, past the Shrine of Amana, where the Milfinito's song sleeps creatures of the dark like Nashandra, and he was protected by his most loyal knight Velsat, who he entrusted to stay here eons past his hollowing. But at the stairs leading to the Throne of Want, you'll be greeted by the Emerald Herald, who will reveal her true identity. The Emerald Herald is a crossbreed of a human and an everlasting dragon, and her real name is Shanalot, a name given to her by the dragons. She says she was born of dragons yet created by men, which leads us to believe this man was Aldir, and in his experiments he succeeded in creating a dragon crossbreed, born to fulfill the role of Firekeeper to aid the undead in breaking the curse. She finishes this conversation by saying Nashandra is coming after you, knowing that you will now take the throne and link the fire. She yearns for the first flame and for the soul of a great soul, that of which you possess. And Shanalot asks for you to put Nashandra to rest. Nashandra used you to go straight to Vendrick as she couldn't do so herself. You can't open the door to the Throne of Want unless you equip the King's Ring, granting passage to the final steps of the game, and down, yet again, another epic walk to a boss battle, or in this case, boss battles. The first defenders of the throne, however, are not Nashandra, it is the Throne Watch and the Throne Defenders. These defenders have resided here for a very long time. One appears to be male and the other female, and their goal is to guard the throne, or wait until someone strong enough takes the throne. There are several theories on who these people may be, however I've found one that's extremely interesting which we could explore. These defenders could very well be the Prince of Alkan and the Princess of Ven. This is based on the fact that the Throne Defender uses faith and sun buffs, and the Tower of Belfry Soul is Latin for sun. The Throne Watcher uses magic and moon buffs, and the Tower of Belfry Luna is Latin for moon. The Throne Watcher's shield also makes a bell noise when you hit it, and they are the only bosses in the game that revive each other, representing the love that they could have had for each other. Why exactly they are here to defend the throne is unanswered, but it's a pretty decent boss fight nevertheless. When you defeat them, something very interesting will happen before you fight Nashandra. The keen eye would notice that it's her passing through the fog wall to challenge you. In a way, you are her final boss. It's important to note that she may not even want the throne for herself. She may just want to battle you because she seeks power, and it's at this point where your soul will be the strongest. She's waited until you've defeated everything up until now, and getting yourself to the Throne of Want and winning over the Throne Defender and Throne Watcher was the final step. Others do believe her motivation is to stop you from linking the first flame and ushering in an age of dark by taking the throne for herself. Before you're able to reach the throne, however, Aldir comes for one last time, asking you how much you really want this, and proceeds to battle you. This is a pretty underwhelming fight for Aldir, however, it's clear upon defeating him he does not die. He just wanted to test your courage in receiving the throne. This ending is clearly one of the most controversial endings in any Dark Souls game. Time after time there has been a chosen undead who links the flame and ends the undead curse. Time after time they choose to link the fire and prolong the Age of Light. This is just seen as the normal way to go about it. In this cutscene it's clear what was chosen, and you don't get to choose. It seems like you usher in the Age of Dark regardless of what happens. There are theories that this kiln to light the first flame is a way of not getting burnt from it, or it's an elevator down to the kiln, but it's a common belief amongst those that have played this game that the chosen undead refuses to continue it no matter what ending you choose. You could take the throne and link the fire, which will lift the curse of the undead temporarily, or let the flame die out and continue the cycle naturally. I really like the original ending of this game and the lack of choice and rejection of the choice entirely, as this is what Dark Souls 2 is all about. The quest for permanence is futile. But what I like the most about this story of this game is it focuses more on the chosen undead and the curse of the undead itself. It has some great characters and themes that represent real life struggles, and overall the adventure itself was extremely fun to play. I do want to note, however, this is easily the hardest Dark Souls story to understand. This script took me a very long time to type out because I kept going in circles circles about what things meant and what theory sounded the best, and what the hell this whole story was even about. But this is just a fantastic game, and it's really sad to see that people don't appreciate it as much as I do. Honestly, all of the negatives aside, it's hard to say this game isn't a masterpiece. It's so much more fun than most other games that I've played, and it's good enough to be a standalone game and stand on its own two legs. If you've managed to stay until the end, thank you so much. This took a while to make, and it would be greatly appreciated if you would consider subscribing or sharing this video around, as it's the only way this will grow. Also, I'll probably have a Patreon up and running by the time this video releases. I've got no real plans on what that will look like, but it'll mainly be a way of just supporting this channel. And full transparency, in total this channel has made about $106 AUD, which is around 72 USD, and while it's great I'm able to earn any kind of money from the stuff that I love doing without a boss telling me what to do, it's something I'll not be able to make a career out of right now. But if I could get to the stage where I could, turn this into a full-time job, that would be a dream. But if you have anything to add or have a theory you wouldn't mind discussing, it would be great if you comment that down below. If you want to check out my previous Dark Souls video going over Dark Souls 1, that would be in the description as well. This is part 2 of 3 in this video essay series, and I'm so damn excited to start working on Dark Souls 3, finally. And as always, stay safe, stay humble, and stay sexy. Moi moi moi, suck your nipple.